My mother-in-law pretended to be kind until I caught her poisoning my reputation. I'm Ava, I'm 33, and trust me, I don't play innocent anymore. I was folding laundry in my bedroom when I heard the soft knock on the front door. 3 gentle taps, just like always. Through the window, I could see Patricia's silver sedan in our driveway, gleaming under the afternoon sun. She'd been stopping by every Tuesday for the past 6 months, ever since David and I moved into this house. Always with fresh cookies, always with that warm smile, always asking if there was anything she could do to help. Ava, dear. Her voice carried that musical quality that had initially charmed me. I brought those oatmeal raisin cookies you love so much. I smoothed my hair and opened the door, forcing a smile. Patricia stood there in her pristine cream cardigan, holding a covered plate. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her lipstick immaculate despite the heat. She was the picture of maternal warmth, or so I'd thought for the first 5 years of my marriage to her son. Patricia, you didn't have to, I said, stepping aside to let her in. The familiar scent of her floral perfume filled our entryway. Nonsense, dear. I was baking anyway. She bustled into our kitchen, immediately setting the plate on the counter and beginning to uncover it. How are you feeling? You looked a bit pale at Sunday dinner. There it was again, that subtle dig wrapped in apparent concern. I'd learned to recognize them over the years, these little barbs disguised as motherly care. But today felt different. Today, something in her tone made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I'm fine, just tired from work, I replied, watching as she arranged the cookies with unnecessary precision. David's working late again tonight. Oh, that boy works too hard. She clicked her tongue, but I caught the flash of something in her eyes. Satisfaction? You know, I was just talking to Mrs. Henderson at the grocery store yesterday. She mentioned the most interesting thing about your little incident at the PDA meeting last week. My blood went cold. The PDA meeting where I'd had a heated discussion with the treasurer about budget allocations. It had been professional, necessary even, but I'd raised my voice when she'd dismissed my concerns about the playground equipment fund. What could Patricia possibly know about that? What incident? I asked carefully, my hands gripping the kitchen counter. Patricia's smile never wavered, but something predatory flickered behind her kind eyes. Oh, nothing serious, dear. Just that you seemed quite aggressive with poor Janet. Mrs. Henderson was concerned about your temper. The word aggressive hit me like a slap. I'd been assertive, yes, but aggressive? And how had Mrs. Henderson even heard about it? She wasn't at the meeting, and neither was Patricia. I wasn't aggressive, I said slowly. I was advocating for the children's safety. Of course, dear. I'm sure that's how you saw it. Patricia patted my arm with mock sympathy. But you know how people talk. Especially about, well, women who might be struggling with the stress of married life. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. I stared at her, really looked at her for the first time in years, and saw something I'd been blind to before. The slight smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. The way her fingers drummed against the counter. The calculated timing of this visit, right after David left for work. What exactly are you saying, Patricia? She laughed, light and airy. Oh, nothing at all. I just worry about you, that's all. Marriage can be so challenging, especially when couples are adjusting to each other's expectations. Her pause before adjusting felt deliberate, loaded with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. But I was starting to understand that this woman, this sweet, cookie-baking mother-in-law I'd tried so hard to please, had been playing a game I didn't even know existed. I should get going, Patricia said, gathering her purse. David mentioned you two might be having dinner with the Clarks this weekend. Such lovely people. I do hope everything goes smoothly. The way she emphasized smoothly made my stomach clench. After she left, I stood in my kitchen staring at the cookies, my mind racing. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The pieces were there, scattered around me like breadcrumbs, but I couldn't quite see the trail yet. I pulled out my phone and called my sister Jenny. Hey, what's up? Jenny's voice was warm, familiar, safe. Can I ask you something weird? Have you heard anything strange about me lately? From anyone. There was a pause. Too long of a pause. Jenny. Ava, okay, this is awkward, but Melissa from your book club called me last week. She was worried about you. My heart started pounding. Worried how? She said you'd been acting erratic at the meetings. Getting upset over small things. Snapping at people. She wondered if everything was okay at home with you and David. I nearly dropped the phone. That's not. Jenny, that never happened. I've missed the last 3 book club meetings because of work conferences. I haven't been to one in over a month. Silence stretched between us like a chasm. But Melissa said. Melissa said what? Exactly? That you'd been there last Tuesday. That you'd gotten angry when they chose a book you didn't like and stormed out. Last Tuesday. The day Patricia had visited, bringing cookies and asking about my week. The day I told her I was disappointed about missing book club again because of a client dinner. Jenny, I was at the Marriott downtown last Tuesday until almost 10 p.m. I have receipts, photos, witnesses. I was nowhere near book club. The realization hit me like a freight train. Someone had been impersonating me. Or more accurately, someone had been telling stories about me, creating incidents that never happened, building a narrative of instability and aggression. And there was only one person who knew my schedule well enough, who had access to my friend groups, who could spin these tales with just enough believable detail to make them stick. I have to go, I told Jenny, my hands shaking. Ava, wait. I hung up and immediately started scrolling through my contacts. Mrs. Henderson from Patricia's story. I barely knew the woman, but she lived 2 streets over. Before I could lose my nerve, I dialed her number. Mrs. Henderson? This is Ava Thompson, David's wife. I hope you don't mind me calling. Oh, she sounded flustered. Hello, dear. How are you? I'm calling because I heard you might have some concerns about my behavior at the PDA meeting last week. I wanted to address them directly. Another pause. Then, well, Patricia mentioned you'd had some difficulties there, but I don't really know the details. What exactly did Patricia tell you? Just that you'd gotten quite upset with the other mothers. Raised your voice, used some colorful language. She was worried about you, said the stress of trying to conceive might be affecting your emotional state. The blood drained from my face. Trying to conceive. David and I had been trying for a baby for 8 months, but we'd told no one. No one except Patricia, during a vulnerable moment 3 weeks ago when she'd asked why we seemed subdued at Sunday dinner. Mrs. Henderson, I need you to know that what Patricia told you isn't true. I did raise my voice during a budget discussion, but there was no inappropriate language, and it was a professional disagreement about children's safety equipment. Nothing more. Oh. Well, Patricia seemed so concerned. She said you might need someone to talk to. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen as the afternoon light faded, staring at those perfect oatmeal raisin cookies. Each one was identical, symmetrical, flawless. Just like Patricia's performance. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Running even later tonight. Mom called and wants to have lunch tomorrow to discuss something important about you. Said she's worried. Everything okay? I stared at the message until the words blurred. Patricia was escalating whatever game she was playing. The lunch with David would be the next move, another opportunity to plant seeds of doubt about my stability, my fitness as a wife, my readiness for motherhood. But why? What did she gain from sabotaging me? I spent the evening making phone calls. Careful, casual conversations with other friends and neighbors. Each call revealed another small poison drop. A story about me being rude to a cashier. I'd never been to that store. Concerns about my drinking. I'd had 1 glass of wine at a dinner party 6 months ago. Worry that I was struggling with depression because I'd seemed withdrawn at events I'd never attended. Every story came back to Patricia, always presented as loving concern from a worried mother-in-law, always just believable enough to stick. By the time David came home at nearly 11, I was sitting at our kitchen table with a notebook full of evidence. Dates, times, contradictions. A pattern of systematic character assassinations spanning months. Hey, babe. David kissed the top of my head, loosening his tie. You look intense. Everything okay? I looked up at my husband. This man I loved, who trusted his mother implicitly, who still called her mama when he was tired. How could I explain that the woman who'd raised him, who'd welcomed me into the family with open arms, who'd spent years earning my trust and affection, was methodically destroying my reputation?
"We need to talk," I said.
David poured himself a glass of water and sat across from me. In the kitchen light, I could see the exhaustion in his face, the stress lines that had appeared since his promotion. The last thing he needed was this. But I couldn't protect him from the truth anymore. Your mother has been spreading lies about me.
He blinked, then laughed.
Not mockingly, just confused.
What?
Mom adores you. David, listen to me. She's been telling people I'm unstable, creating stories about incidents that never happened. She's been systematically poisoning my reputation for months. I showed him my notes, explained each call, each revelation. Watched as his expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something that might have been the beginning of understanding. There has to be an explanation, he said finally. Maybe people are misremembering or... She told Mrs. Henderson we were trying to conceive. We never told anyone that except her. David's face went white. She wouldn't.
She did.
And she's using our private information to build a narrative that I'm emotionally unstable because of fertility struggles. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. David stared at the notebook, flipping through pages of my careful documentation. Why? He whispered. It was the question I'd been asking myself all evening. Why would Patricia do this? She'd always seemed to genuinely care for me. She'd been supportive during my job changes, enthusiastic about our marriage, eager to help with anything we needed. I think, I said slowly, she's afraid of losing you. David looked up sharply. Think about it. You're her only child. She's been the most important woman in your life for 35 years. We've been married for 5, but in the last year, we've gotten closer. We've been making more decisions without consulting her, planning for children, building our own life. That's normal, David said. That's what married couples do. But it's not normal for Patricia. She's used to being central to your life. And if she can convince you that I'm unstable, if she can make you doubt our relationship, the implication hung between us. David ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized from his most stressed moments. I can't believe she would do this. Then come with me tomorrow. To her lunch. Ava. Don't tell her you know. Just listen. Really listen to what she says about me. David was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. If Patricia wanted to play games, I would give her a game she'd never forget. I called in sick to work and spent the morning setting up recording apps on both David's phone and mine. Then I did something that went against every instinct I had. I made myself look exactly like the unstable woman Patricia had been describing. I skipped my morning shower, pulled my hair into a messy bun, wore an old sweater with a small stain on the sleeve. I wanted to look tired, stressed, slightly unhinged. If Patricia was going to use David's concern against me, I'd give her exactly what she expected to see. David and I arrived at the restaurant separately. He went in first, and I followed 5 minutes later, asking the hostess to seat me at a table with a clear view of their booth, but far enough away that they wouldn't notice me. I watched Patricia's face light up when she saw David, watched her reach across the table to squeeze his hands. The picture of maternal love and concern. From my hidden vantage point, I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see David's body language growing more tense as they talked. Patricia's gestures became more animated, more urgent. She was building to something. Then she pulled out her phone. I watched her scroll through something, then hand it to David. His face went pale as he looked at whatever she was showing him. My phone buzzed. A text from David. She has photos. We need to leave.
Now.
I slipped out of the restaurant and met him in the parking lot. His hands were shaking as he held his phone. She has pictures of you, he said. From last week, at the grocery store. Ava, you look like you're having a breakdown. I stared at the photos he showed me. There I was in the cereal aisle, face contorted mid-sneeze, hair disheveled from the wind, reaching for a box on a high shelf with an expression that, out of context, looked desperate or unhinged. "She's been following me," I whispered. "And she's been taking pictures. Building evidence." David's voice was hollow. "She said she was worried about your mental health. That she'd been documenting concerning behavior to show me." The sophistication of it took my breath away. This wasn't just spreading rumors. This was creating false evidence, building a case for my instability with carefully selected moments taken out of context. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her I needed to think about it, that I'd talk to you." "And what did she say?" David looked at me with something close to fear. "She said she hoped you'd get the help you need before you hurt yourself or someone else." The poison was spreading faster now, becoming more concentrated. Patricia wasn't just undermining me anymore. She was positioning herself as the concerned observer of my dangerous mental state. "We need to confront her," I said. "Ava, she has photos. She has witnesses. If she takes this to who? The police? Our friends? Your work?" I felt something cold and hard settling in my chest. "David, she's already told half the neighborhood I'm unstable. Those photos won't prove anything except that she's been stalking me." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. Patricia had been building this case for months, maybe longer. She had documentation, witnesses, a narrative of escalating concern. If this went public, who would believe my word against hers? That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I drove to Patricia's house unannounced. She opened the door in her robe, her hair in curlers, her face free of makeup. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked ordinary, human, vulnerable.
Ava.
What a surprise. "Is everything all right? Can I come in, Patricia? I think we need to talk." Something flickered in her eyes, surprise, calculation, maybe even fear. But she stepped aside and let me into her pristine living room. "Would you like some tea?" she asked, already moving toward the kitchen. "No, thank you. I'll stand." She turned to face me, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. Two women who'd been circling each other for months without either of us acknowledging the dance. "I know what you've been doing," I said quietly. Patricia's face didn't change. "I'm not sure what you mean, dear." The lies. The photos. The systematic destruction of my reputation.
Still nothing.
She was good at this. "The question I have," I continued, "is why? What did I ever do to you that deserved this?" Patricia was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, colder, more honest than I'd ever heard it. "You took my son. I married him. That's not the same thing, isn't it?" She moved to her mantelpiece, running her fingers along the framed photos there. Pictures of David as a child, as a teenager, at his college graduation. None of our wedding photos, I noticed. David was everything to me after his father died. My whole world. My purpose. And then you came along with your career and your independence and your plans for the future. "Those plans included you," I said. "We never tried to cut you out." Patricia laughed, and the sound was bitter. "Cut me out? You did something much worse. You made me irrelevant." She turned to face me fully. "Do you know what it's like to watch your child stop needing you? To see them build a life that has no real space for you in it?" "Patricia, that's normal. That's what children are supposed to do." Easy words from someone who's never had children. The barb hit its mark, and I flinched. She saw it and smiled. "Yes, I know about your struggles. David tells me everything when he's worried. And he's been so worried about you lately. Because you've been feeding him lies. Have I? Or have I simply been helping him see what was already there?" I stared at her. This woman I'd thought I knew. "You're sick." I'm a mother protecting her child. From what? From love? From happiness? From making the biggest mistake of his life? The words hung in the air between us. Finally, the truth was out in the open. "And if you succeed?" I asked. "If you destroy our marriage? What then? Do you think David will thank you for it?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. "He'll understand eventually, when he sees what you really are." "And what am I, Patricia?" She studied me with those calculating eyes. You're a woman who isn't good enough for my son, who will never be good enough. And deep down you know it. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Not just the words, but the surgical precision with which she'd chosen them. She'd found my deepest insecurity, the fear that I wasn't worthy of David's love, and weaponized it. I'm going to tell him, I said. Everything. Tonight. Tell him what? That his mother loves him? That she's concerned about his wife's increasingly erratic behavior? Patricia's smile was sharp as a blade. Go ahead, dear. Tell him whatever you like. But remember, I have evidence. Photos. Witnesses. A pattern of documented concerns spanning months. And I have the truth.
Do you?
Because the truth is, you have been acting strangely lately. Calling people to ask what they've heard about you. Skipping social events. Looking tired and stressed. Making accusations against a woman who's done nothing but try to help you. I realized with growing horror that she was right. In trying to uncover her game, I'd played right into it. My investigation had looked like paranoia. My absence from events she'd lied about had seemed like withdrawal. My confrontation with her now would seem like an unstable woman lashing out at her concerned mother-in-law. You're very good at this, I said quietly. I've had 5 years to perfect it. 5 years. Since the beginning of my marriage. All those little comments, those gentle suggestions, those moments of seeming support, they'd all been moves in a longer game. Why wait until now to escalate? Patricia's smile turned almost fond. You finally started talking about children. About giving David the family he deserves. I couldn't let that happen. Because then you'd really lose him. Because then he'd be tied to you forever. And David deserves better than a woman who can't even see what's happening to her own life. I left Patricia's house that night with my hands shaking and my mind racing. She was right about one thing. I couldn't prove any of what she'd done. Every move had been calculated, every lie wrapped in apparent concern, every piece of evidence crafted to support her narrative. But she'd made one mistake. She'd assumed I would fight her on her terms. When I got home, David was waiting for me in the living room. His face was pale, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Where were you? He asked. Talking to your mother. He closed his eyes. Ava. She told me the truth tonight. All of it. I sat down across from him and told him everything. The conversation, the admissions, the 5-year timeline. I watched his face cycle through disbelief, horror, and finally, a kind of broken acceptance. I don't know what to do, he whispered when I finished. I do, I said. We're going to beat her at her own game. Over the next 2 weeks, David and I became co-conspirators. He continued having his regular calls with Patricia, but now he was listening with new ears. He started asking subtle questions, probing for inconsistencies in her stories. Meanwhile, I did something that felt counterintuitive. I started showing up to everything. Book club, PDA meetings, neighborhood gatherings. I was friendly, engaged, normal. When people mentioned Patricia's concerns about me, I thanked them for caring and assured them I was doing well. Slowly, the narrative began to shift. The woman Patricia had described, erratic, aggressive, unstable, didn't match the person people were seeing with their own eyes. But Patricia was clever. She adapted, started suggesting that my sudden improvement was proof of how bad things had gotten. Thank goodness she's finally getting help, she told people. I was so worried. It might have worked, except for one thing. Patricia got greedy. The final move came 3 weeks after our confrontation. David called me at work, his voice tight with controlled anger. She's gone too far, he said. You need to come home.
Now.
I found him in our kitchen, staring at his laptop screen. On it was an email from Patricia to his boss, marked as confidential and concerning. Dear Robert, it read. I hope you'll forgive me for reaching out directly, but I'm concerned about David's well-being. His wife has been struggling with some mental health issues lately, and I'm worried it might be affecting his work performance. I know David would never ask for help himself, but I thought you should be aware of the situation at home. Perhaps there are resources the company could provide. The email went on, painting a picture of me as dangerously unstable and David as a loyal husband struggling to cope. It suggested that his recent late hours and stress might be related to home problems rather than work challenges. She sent this yesterday, David said. Robert called me into his office this morning to ask if I needed time off to deal with personal issues. I sank into a chair, staring at the screen. Patricia had crossed the line from personal sabotage into professional destruction. She was willing to damage David's career to get to me. What did you tell him? The truth. That my mother has been spreading lies about my wife, and that I was sorry he'd been dragged into our family drama. How did he react? David's smile was grim. He said he'd had a feeling something was off. Apparently, Patricia has called the office several times over the past month, always with some new concern about my well-being or yours. The pieces were falling into place. Patricia's campaign hadn't just been social. She'd been systematically targeting every aspect of our lives. Our friends, our community, our careers. She made one mistake, David continued. She involved someone who knows us well enough to see through her act. That evening, we made a decision that felt both inevitable and terrifying. We were going to confront Patricia together, but not privately. We were going to do it at Sunday dinner, in front of David's aunt and uncle who always attended, with proof of everything she'd done. Sunday came gray and drizzly, matching my mood as we drove to Patricia's house. David's Aunt Sarah and Uncle Tom were already there, looking comfortable and unsuspecting in the living room.
Ava.
David. Patricia's greeting was as warm as ever, but I caught the flash of calculation in her eyes when she saw us together. I was just telling Sarah about the lovely flowers you sent for her birthday. I hadn't sent any flowers. Another lie, but a harmless one. Almost endearing in its smallness compared to what was coming. We made it through dinner with careful conversation and forced smiles. Patricia was the perfect hostess, attentive and gracious. If I had known better, I would have believed completely in her kindness. Finally, over dessert, David cleared his throat. Mom, we need to discuss something important. Patricia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Of course, dear. What is it? We know what you've been doing. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah and Tom looked confused, glancing between us with growing concern. I'm not sure what you mean, Patricia said carefully. David pulled out his phone and began reading. The email to his boss. Transcripts of phone calls he'd recorded with her permission, calls where she'd repeated her lies about me. Screenshots of the photos she'd taken, with metadata showing they'd been deliberately cropped and staged. With each piece of evidence, Patricia's composure cracked a little more. By the time David finished, she looked like a different person entirely. Smaller. Older.
Defeated.
Patricia, Sarah said, her voice shocked. This can't be true. Patricia looked around the table at all of us, her family, the people who'd loved and trusted her for decades. I saw the moment she realized her game was over. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking. I was protecting him. From what? Tom asked gently. From making a mistake. From settling for less than he deserves. The raw pain in her voice caught me off guard. For the first time, I saw past the manipulation to the fear underneath. The terror of being forgotten, replaced, deemed unnecessary. Mom, David said quietly, Ava is not your enemy. She never was. Patricia looked at me across the table, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been regret. I know, she whispered. But then her face hardened again, and I realized that knowing and accepting were two different things. This doesn't change anything, she said, straightening in her chair. You'll see eventually. When the marriage falls apart, when she shows her true colors, you'll remember that I tried to warn you. David stood up from the table. We're leaving. David, wait.
No, Mom.
We're done. When you're ready to apologize to Ava and mean it, when you're ready to accept our marriage and respect our boundaries, you can call us. Until then, we need space. We left Patricia sitting at her dining room table, surrounded by the debris of our confrontation and the shocked faces of her brother and sister-in-law. In the car, David and I drove in silence for several miles before either of us spoke. Do you think she'll change? I asked. David was quiet for a long time. I don't know. She's been playing this game for so long, I'm not sure she knows how to stop. And if she doesn't, then we build our life without her." The words should have felt victorious, but instead they felt sad. Whatever else Patricia had done, she was David's mother. Cutting her out would leave a wound that might never fully heal. 3 months passed without contact. We heard through Sarah that Patricia was struggling, that she'd been seeing a therapist, that she talked about us constantly. But no apology came. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon that felt depressingly familiar, I heard the soft knock on our front door. 3 gentle taps, just like always. I opened it to find Patricia standing there, but she looked different. Smaller, somehow. Uncertain. She wasn't holding cookies. "Hello, Ava," she said quietly. "Patricia. May I come in? I have something I need to say." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her into our living room. She perched on the edge of the sofa, like a bird ready to take flight. "I owe you an apology," she began, and her voice shook. "What I did was unforgivable. I convinced myself I was protecting David, but the truth is, I was protecting myself. From losing him. From becoming irrelevant." I sat across from her, saying nothing. "I was wrong about you. You're not the enemy I made you out to be. You love my son, and he loves you, and I should have been grateful for that instead of threatened by it." The words sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced them, but the pain in her eyes looked real. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued. "I just wanted you to know that I see what I did. I see the damage I caused. And I'm sorry." "Why now?" I asked. Patricia's composure cracked slightly. "Because Sarah made me understand something. She asked me what I wanted my legacy with David to be. Did I want to be remembered as the mother who loved him, or the mother who tried to destroy his happiness?" We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, I spoke. "I accept your apology, Patricia. But accepting it and trusting you again are 2 different things." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I understand. If you want to rebuild a relationship with us, it has to be on our terms. Boundaries that you respect. No more manipulation, no more games." "Yes. And if you ever try anything like this again." "I won't. I can't. I can't live with myself knowing what I became." After she left, I called David at work to tell him about the visit. He listened quietly, then sighed. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think she means it.
Right now.
But I also think this is who she is when she feels threatened. And someday, she might feel threatened again. So what do? We move forward carefully. We give her a chance to prove she's changed, but we don't forget what she's capable of. 6 months later, Patricia and I have something that resembles a relationship. She's polite, respectful, careful with her words. She asks before visiting, respects our boundaries, and treats me with genuine warmth. But sometimes, when she thinks I'm not looking, I catch her watching me with those calculating eyes. And I remember that people don't really change their fundamental nature, they just learn to control it better. Last week, David and I found out we're finally pregnant. We told Patricia together, in our living room, with David's hand protectively on my shoulder. Her face lit up with what looked like genuine joy, and she hugged us both with tears in her eyes. "I'm so happy for you," she said, and I believed her. But later, as she was leaving, she paused at the front door and looked back at me. "You know," she said casually, "pregnancy can be so stressful. I do hope you'll take care of yourself. It would be terrible if anything went wrong." The words were innocent enough, caring even, but something in her tone, something in the way her eyes lingered on my face, made my blood run cold. David didn't catch it. He was already heading inside, talking about baby names and nursery colors. But I heard it clearly, the subtle poison wrapped in apparent concern. I stood in the doorway watching Patricia's silver sedan disappear down our street, one hand unconsciously moving to protect my still flat stomach. The game, it seemed, was starting all over again. And this time, she wouldn't just be playing for David's attention. She'd be playing for the love of our child.